Coming up in 2 minutes is episode 7 of the Good Grief, Good God Show, hosted by Grammy Nominee and Emmy award-winning hit songwriter of 15 top 10 songs, including 9 number ones, Brad Warren of the Warren Brothers. Join Brad monthly on the first and third Tuesdays for raw, honest conversation about surviving things that suck on your favorite audio platform and in video on YouTube. I'm producer Matt Pivito. For today's episode, Brad welcomes the only artist to win 3 times the Grammy for Best Rock Gospel Album, Ashley Cleveland. Over the past 30 years, Ashley has recorded nearly a dozen records and contributed background vocals for well over 300 albums. She might not be a household name, but make no doubt about it, she is one of the most well-respected musicians in the business. In addition to music, she authored her memoir entitled Little Black Sheep in 2013. In 2018, she was the subject of a documentary titled Who is the Girl? The Story of Ashley Cleveland. In the book and documentary, Ashley shares her story of a dysfunctional childhood and addiction, but most importantly, the redemption through her faith in God. Brad can relate to most of Ashley's story, especially addiction, finding the good in grief, and being a recovering alcoholic. Ashley is about as raw as they come. Everything Brad knows and loves. So before we begin, a few quick housekeeping notes. To learn more about today's guest and the show, check the description or visit goodgriefgoodgodshow.com, where you'll find the most up-to-date news, including links to all past episodes, plus more. Lastly, if you'd like to help support the show, please help spread the word by sharing with your friends. Hit that subscribe button and give us a 5-star review. On the behalf of Brad's wife, Michelle, segment producer and guest booker, Lisa Bolt, we hope you too will find the good in grief. The Good Grief, Good God Show is brought to you in memory of Sage Michael Warren.
Super cool. Yeah.
Here's the miracle in all of this.
So do I get a cigar?
Yeah. Sure. The miracle in all of this is that my wife actually just took all the furniture out of her room and had us put microphones and things in it.
That's a labor of love. It is absolutely.
She didn't have to go find a matching carpet and all, but
that is really funny.
covered up the TV that was there.
What a beautiful setting, though.
Well, first of all, and I know we're not even starting yet, but your willingness, you don't have a clue what I'm doing. And you just,
but you're doing it.
Yeah, so, that's great. I mean, I'm honored that, it's right up your wheelhouse. So this is.
Well, I always, at this point in my life, I assume if people, and I'm always, it's like now I keep thinking I'm getting ready to retire. And then I get all this, just different things come in and I just think, well, if people are asking me, I must have something to bring to or they wouldn't, because at this point, I'm not out, marketing myself. So
it's interesting how that works. Like,
it's great.
If you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans. I was really kind of, a year and a half ago, I'm like, okay, I lost a son. Okay, just winding down a little bit. I'm gonna write less. We bought a house in Florida. We love to go down there. It's a place of peace. I'm like, okay, just kind of split time. And it has been, I literally have like 4 jobs right now and everything that you can imagine going on, but it's being willing.
And I think it's your soul gets fed a lot more.
It does.
And that's the kind of, there's a poet named David White who talks about, he was working he was directing some nonprofit program which was super worthy, but he was so exhausted all the time, and he went to his mentor and he said, the mentor is like a monk, and he said, I don't think the opposite of exhaustion is rest. I think the opposite of exhaustion is wholeheartedness. So when you're doing the thing that you're meant to do, it somehow is life-giving to where it's not that you don't still need rest and time away, but it just hits you differently.
And the rest and time away is not the goal. It's just like a little eye of the hurricane in your schedule. It is actually rest. And instead of that goal being to just sit there and rot away in a beach chair with a cigar, which was kind of my plan. going to be a little siesta for me.
I know I still reserve the right to do that. It's like, I may take up Marlboros again. What's it going to do? Kill me?
I actually use that same verbiage. I say, I reserve the right to freak out, lose my mind, and sell everything and move to that little house in Florida and just like start a paper route. I reserve the right.
Yeah.
And just
it's
reserving
comforting.
the right makes everything okay. Because when it gets too crazy, I'm like, what if I just don't show up for anything ever again?
Yeah.
Will the world continue to turn? Yes.
Yes, it will.
I mean, it's self-importantizing. The trivial these days is I have been able to wipe away a lot of things on my schedule that are fun and they're with good people and they're good probably, and they might be good for my career, which I probably should be paying more attention to right now. I just can't bring myself to care.
I know. And somehow your career, I think in a way, my neglect has really helped my career.
You come across as very cool, by the way. You don't seem to care about that.
I do not care. I mean, that's the beauty of being older. It's like your give a shitter just goes away.
Gone. And the fact that you kind of play guitar like Keith Richards makes you really cool. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
that's nutty.
I love that. I'll take it.
The fact that you even can like know how Keith Richards plays puts you in a certain category.
I think people sort of people like us, we fall into two categories, and it's not that we don't all love the Beatles and the Stones, but we do fall into one slot.
Stones, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
Stones.
when it's the Stones, you love the Beatles, but you're defined by the Stones.
Totally. Yeah. I probably know more Beatles songs in a way, but I am Stones guy. If I were to aspire to playing, favorite Keith Richards quote.
Oh, I don't even have a favorite quote.
Yes, one of my, so the one that comes to my mind is, I believe I'm going to heaven. I just think I'm in for a bit of a spanking. which is amazing.
That's really good.
I actually agree with him.
That is so good.
There's a story, and we'll get to serious things in a minute, but you're just making me think about Keith. So Bobby Keys was the sax player.
Well, I knew Bobby, but because he lived here.
He lived here, and we were friends, and he would come play on our demos and hang out. To be honest, we had the same drug dealer for a while, but he was a great guy.
Sounds right.
And he'd be cool with me saying that if he was still around. But he said that he and Keith after a tour would just go to this little like an alcoholic bed and breakfast place, some kind of little pub hotel thing out in the middle of somewhere in Europe, Ireland or Scotland or something in the middle of nowhere. And they would just decompress from the road. They would party less, but they would party and then work themselves down to where they could go back home and just be people. Cause it's like they're on stun, I assume.
Yeah.
And, so apparently they had some problem or had been talking about closing down. They didn't know, whatever. And the following year after the tour, Bobby said he and Keith are sitting at a table and at this little place, and the bill came, and Keith said, Keith tried to give his card to them, and whoever was there said, no, your money's no good here. And he's like, no, I love this place. I love this place. I want to support you. Take it. And they're like, no, Mr. Richards, your money's no good here. And he's like, no, I want to pay. I want to pay the money. Please take it. And they're like, no, you don't understand. You bought this place last year. You own it. Your money is literally no good here.
That's hilarious. In a blackout, you
bought this place. That's when you have too much money and not enough time. Too many. Yeah,
it's kind of amazing he's alive.
There's something about the honesty he lives with, though, I think that is a real key. Bobby Keys also said that after his shows, the two of them would go to a pool hall and nobody would bother them. They'd hang out with the locals and drink. And he said Mick would leave with 5 security guards and everyone would attack him. And I do think we in the music business can present one scenario.
Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, I know. Kenny just worked on Bonnie Raitt's new record, and she's pretty neurotic about that stuff too. And it's kind of like, I can't have, no, you can't, no, I can't be I can't be photoed. I can't, it's got to be super like curated all the time. And where you just think, I couldn't live that way.
There's a freedom to apathy. It's really, I enjoy and by the way, I'm in the business, but I'm not a star. So I can honestly.
Me too. I love it. It's like, I just,
I have some friends that are actual stars, and there are challenges that come with that, but there is a way to, I got some guys that do it pretty good. You can be a really, really regular guy, gal, and then just have certain boundaries and, set up certain things. So I want to talk about your book, but first I want to read. I get a quote for everyone that comes on here. That's my homework.
Okay.
I love quotes. I always say that I love quotes. I probably need to stop saying that. But the quote I found for you was a Theodore Roosevelt quote, something that makes me think about you. Courage isn't the strength to go on. It's going on when you don't have the strength. And that's Theodore Roosevelt. And it just made me think, because I want you to talk about you. I want to hear everything. I read your book long before I met you.
That's right.
I can't remember who gave it to me, but it was awesome. I couldn't put it down. I think I read it in like a week, and it was awesome. And so I want you to tell me what part of your story you're comfortable with.
Oh gosh.
Well, it's in a book. You're comfortable with all of it, right?
Yeah. I'm not particularly. I should probably be more judicious about what I do and don't tell. I've just kind of. That's not the way I roll. Mm-hmm. I'm far more in danger of oversharing. But I think relative to what you're going after here in terms of grief, I'm from Knoxville, and I was born into kind of an upper middle class alcoholic dynasty. So it was really hard to not encounter so both my parents, alcoholics, extended family members, and I think my family, and there was more to it than that. My father was gay and very much in the closet, and kind of felt like he could compartmentalize his life and like have his family over here sort of as a beard, and then have his real life over here where he was actually himself. And clearly that wasn't going to work. So
how old were you when you?
So my parents divorced when I was about in kindergarten, but there was prior to that. I think when you live in an environment where there is a lot of drinking and a lot of secrets, because my father's sort of solution to anything was just clam up. He was really good at the silent treatment, and it would go on for long, long periods of time. So
Baptist?
No, he was Presbyterian, but I think he came from a culture, like he had a very domineering mother, and a silent father. So it's, he came by it honestly, and he was doing the best he knew how to do. I mean, I think it took the book to understand that, for me anyway, because when you're sort of the recipient of that, you take it a lot harder. But I think when all of that started to collapse, when you're the kid, especially when you can't quite identify what's happening, it's not like anybody was beating on my mother, or, there wasn't obvious problems. And my parents were both very beautiful and very well put together. My dad was an architect, interior designer, and so they lived in beautiful places. They dressed beautifully. They turned out, they knew how to perform. And so for me, it was, I'm kind of the scapegoat, the one that acts out all the pain and dysfunction of the family, which I seem to be more adept at. But it's that feeling of, I know something is really wrong. I don't know what it is. It's probably me, because I was the one getting in trouble all the time, and you like, I'm a huge animal lover. My kids all left home, so I got tons of dogs, and it's just the way I roll.
But the ideas.
Yeah.
Sorry. We've had this talk.
But you could kind of see the pain and suffering of our family in that all our pets came to bad ends because nobody was paying attention. Everybody was just trying to survive. And so, and then after they divorced, my mother got a job offer in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. So we moved from Knoxville, Tennessee, which is, it's probably the third largest city in Tennessee, but it's a town. Mm-hmm. At least it was back then. You know what I'm saying? And it's a southern
water
town.
tower.
Yeah.
Enough said.
Yeah. And to San Francisco, which is fully 15 or 20 years ahead of anything. I mean, it was like time travel to Mars or something, and I'm this Southern kid. I talk like this and I'm already brokenhearted. I'm already mad. And, I was like a powder keg. And they, you go to a new place and you know how kids are. I was like an exotic for 5 minutes where it's like
a fun toy.
Yeah, fun toy. But they tired of me really quickly. And then it was just horrendous. It really was. I mean, I have a distinct memory in 6th grade of being on the playground and having the entire 6th grade class standing in a circle around me, throwing rocks at me. Ooh. And I finally, they blew the whistle and I ran into the bathroom and the most despised kid in the 6th grade. And I always remembered him because he pulled all his eyelashes out. He came into the girls' bathroom to console me. And I thought, this is where I am on the totem pole.
It's a new bottom.
It's come to this. So.
It's funny in the now in the long run, like you are a perfect mix of Knoxville and San Francisco. It's awesome, but as a kid, you don't get. Yeah, it's just it
was so not awesome.
The things that give us character later suck at the time. They just do, all of them.
Oh, it was terrible. And then my mother remarried a man who did not like me either. So, it was just inevitable that I was going to start getting in trouble, start smoking cigarettes, start sneaking out, find the bad kids, whoever they were, and do whatever they were doing. And that went on for a while. And my stepfather finally said, it's her or me. And so I was sent back to live with my father in Knoxville, when I was a junior in high school. But, I'm like 16 years old. The drinking age in Knoxville is 18. And my father has no intention of parenting. He doesn't even know what it is, really. So he makes these grand pronouncements like, we're going to get you a car so you can get back and forth to school. I said, okay. And he goes, and we'll just, you take care of your responsibilities and I'm going to go to work every day and then we'll have dinner at night. And I thought, things are looking up. And it was just my ticket to go do anything. I think I missed 55 days of school.
I can imagine.
My senior year, what was the point? And they graduated me, I think, just to get rid of me. Mm-hmm. So, and I had, it was just that typical thing of developing your alcoholism above all else. Oh, yeah. And my father was an alcoholic. So he, when I got close to 18, he let me drink with him. And, I was registered at the University of Tennessee, but, I may have attended each class one time. But the great thing that happened to me at UT was, it was actually two things. I met Pam Tillis, who also was more or less registered at UT. back then, the little Cumberland strip that ran through the campus was just nothing but music clubs. They were little restaurants, but they had like a little stage. And so Pam and I met shortly after she came to town, and we put together a folk duo, and we just started.
How did I not know that? Was that in the book? I must have forgotten it.
Yeah.
I love Pam. She's awesome.
I do too. And she's my oldest friend here. So she was, and then eventually the way I got to Nashville was she offered me a place to live. But I dropped out of school. Pam and I played for a couple of years. I dropped out of school. I went and played up and down the Northern California coastline. I was just playing in clubs all the time. And that's really where I learned to play. And Pam was really the first person that suggested I could be a songwriter. I thought you had to get permission from somebody to do that. It just seemed, because in my generation, there weren't that many artists. An album release was a big deal. It was vinyl. It was a big disc. And, and nobody had a home studio. It's like, it just seemed, the recording industry seemed mysterious and definitely far away from Knoxville. So, but Pam and I, Mel, her father had a publishing company, and she said, let's write a song. And it's like, what? She said, yeah. And he took one of our songs, and nothing ever came of it, but he really liked it. And,
that first little taste of confidence is so important.
Oh my! That was it. It was like, oh my God, I'm a songwriter. That's all it took. And I went back to California. I was played in a few bands, played in clubs by myself, and drank and took drugs in a very life-threatening, destructive way. And that went on for about 10 years. And then I got pregnant. And that really, that was a few years before I even thought about recovery. But I really think my pregnancy for me was kind of the beginning of faith and the beginning of my recovery, even though I didn't know it. And, back then too, there were no treatment centers. And to me, I thought, well, AA, that's for convicts
people
and
homeless
people.
Yeah,
exactly.
Bridge.
That's for people that are somewhere else. Just sheer ignorance. And so I just kind of white knuckled my way through my pregnancy, but I didn't, I was an addict. And so I had some very bad weekends. And I just assumed, we were talking earlier about, thinking God has set aside all his worst punishments. I fully expected that. And because I thought it's one thing for me to hurt myself. It's another thing entirely to hurt other people, especially this little baby. And so I just assumed I'd have a baby that was compromised in every way, and she would be a visible example of what a piece of shit I was. I really believed I firmly, and I didn't have much self-esteem to begin with, so it was easy for me to sit in that lane. And that was, I will say this, my family was pretty amazing. My mother and father, neither one of them were recovering, but they showed up, my mom, I was not with my daughters. I didn't know she was my daughter then, but I was not with her father. And so my mother went through the pregnancy with me. And I had a C-section, and I thought about adoption, but it's like all of a sudden, I think one of the things that is really true when you grow up in a broken family and when you grow up in the isolation of addiction is the isolation. There's a profound sense of loneliness. And at least I had that. And all of a sudden, I'm not alone anymore. There's this little person rolling around inside of me. And I'm thinking, there is, and yet, so there's that on the one hand. And on the other hand, I'm thinking, I'm the worst possible candidate to be a mother.
Yeah.
I have nothing to offer this little person. But at the end of the day, I just could not give her up. And my family said, we will come alongside you and help you, which they did. And so when I had her, once again, I just thought, I don't know what I'm in for. I may have a really rough ride. She may have disabilities. She may need things that I don't even know the basics. She may need things far beyond those basics. But I thought, okay, I want to learn how to do this. I'll get help. I'll, blah, blah, blah. And
what was I just want you to tell about the moment that when
Well,
God
when
said
I
to
went,
you,
so when I went into labor, I ended up in a little tiny hospital where my mother and stepfather lived in a little town called Petaluma, which is about 45 minutes north of San Francisco. And I had a C-section, and it just happened that day that there was no one in the recovery room where you go after you've been anesthetized. And so I was kind of in there by myself, but I had a C-section. I was kind of out of it when she was born. So I just had this very blurry memory of this little tiny person, and they put a little hat on her and whisked her away. So I didn't know anything about anything. And I go into recovery, and a couple of hours later, my mother comes in and says, she is so beautiful. And I said, well, is she all right? And she said, oh, yeah, she's perfect.
you're expecting her to have two heads at the time. And yeah.
Well, yeah, or not be able to breathe on her own or something, anything, And she said, no, she's great. She's doing just great. And then my mom leaves, and I'm laying there thinking, how can that be? How can she be great? There's no way she's great. And that's, and I will preface this by saying I grew up in a family, as much as we were all a wreck, everybody sort of had this faith. And so, and we belonged to a church, and I think it was more of a social ID in some regards, although I think my mother had a very genuine faith. And, but it was their God, and I just sort of naturally believed because it was what I was given, but I didn't, I don't know. I was afraid of God. I was afraid of interacting with God, and kind of spent most of my first 20 years just running. And so I'm just laying there thinking, this is impossible. And I felt overwhelmed by the spirit, by what I believe is the Spirit of the Lord is like pulling back this invisible curtain and just leaning down to me and saying, see, I'm not who you think I am. And I thought, no kidding. And then I realized, I have no idea who you are. And that for me was the beginning.
Yeah.
It's like, because when I left that hospital, I left with a baby, but I left with something else. I left knowing for no good reason that I knew of, I was loved. And it made no sense to me. And so I thought, I don't know what this is. And to be honest with you, I drank for 2 more years, because I didn't have the courage to find out, honestly. But I never could get away from it. That's, that people talk about the hound of heaven. There it was for me.
That was the foundation that was laid. It's funny to me because we think, we think we earn all of the things that happen to us. We think we earn the good things by being good, and we think we earn the bad things by being bad. So when the thing happens, and if it's bad, I'm looking at what I did wrong. And if it's good, I'm patting myself on the back for what I did right and thinking I have all the answers. My sweet, wonderful Christian mother, when I was 3 years old, I was in the bathtub. I'll never forget because it's where I accepted Christ. 3 years old in the bathtub. And she told me as she was cleaning me, if you die tonight and you haven't accepted Jesus, you're going to go to hell. Oh, that happened. I promise. And she's very healthy and alive, and she'll see this. And to her credit, she believed that. So she really wanted me to go to heaven. And at that moment, I did too, so I'm like, hey, sign me up, coach. So, I'm like, okay, hey, you tell me whatever we got to do here. And I lived in fear for the next, I drugged that fear on right into treatment, right into rehab. That it's funny to me too, that the fear of hell that I had that night. And we also, with the movies, The Thief in the Night and all the rapture movies, it's craziness. It's sweet people, amazing people, but craziness involved in a religion, but carrying that on into life. And the fear never stopped me from doing coke or drinking my face off or lying to everyone I met or becoming a complete piece of shit. But I still had the fear. I carried it there, and it maybe was fearful at 3 years old, but it's funny. And when the first time I heard you share, by the way, my son who passed Sage, we saw you together at a meeting share your story at Cumberland Heights on Music Row, which is amazing. It was the best year of his life. And so we shared that. It was awesome. And I never forgot that line. I'm not who you think I am, because I didn't have the exact moment, but I went, yeah, that's it. When I got sober, I went, God's like, hey, I've been here the whole time. I've been getting some false advertising, around, and good people that wanted me to have God, but it was always misrepresented. And I don't even say misrepresented in their hearts or minds, but for me, what they were selling, I wasn't capable of buying. And I had to find it, I found it through a side door or maybe the basement door.
I would argue no one's capable. People sign on, but I'll just speak for myself. It's like love changed me. The end.
Yeah.
Rules, those are made to be broken. It's like everything else is up for grabs, but you encounter the love of Jesus and it does something to you, to where you just think, okay, it's like Peter, where else are we going to go?
The unearned love, because if we have earned love, yes, we think we can do more of that,
right,
to get that love, that unconditional. Deep.
Then you're under the lash.
Then you're under the lash. So I've deep dove into near-death experiences and wonderful heaven experiences. There's a book. Mary C. Neal has got a couple books, a lady that had a total heaven experience. And one of the main things that people that have had near-death heaven experiences, it's so consistent across denominations, religions, to be honest, and worldwide, is that they feel a feeling of unconditional love, not for something that they've done, not for anything, but just for being born, just for being there, that soul. And that's the kind of, we don't understand that. Because I earned everything bad and everything good. Everything I got was a result of what I had done before. And it's really kind of flattening, humbling when you finally feel, I'm just loved for just being here. So how do I do more of this? I just be here more? And actually, that's not a terrible idea. Be here more.
It's a great idea. Yeah. So I think I came back to Nashville and carried on. And when I did finally throw in the towel, it was because my family intervened on me and put me in a hospital. And I think Becca, my daughter, was 2. But, and I don't know that I would have surrendered if it hadn't been for her. So in that way, she saved my life. So because I think part of the problem for me was I knew I was loved, but I did not care about myself on any level. I just thought, I don't think I can I don't know how to live. I don't think I can face the world without a bottle. I just don't think I can.
It's funny you say that because Sage is the reason I got sober. Like my wonderful wife, at the time, I just blamed her because you had to blame somebody. I have 2 other sons that are amazing, and they're younger. And so they are important. But that particular kid, the one who's not here. So I have to, when I look for his purpose, it's all around. There's so much, but that was the thing. Because he, big brown eyes, and he'd look at me, and I'm like, man, I'm everything to this kid. So I can be everything bad or I can be everything good. And literally a combination of things. Certainly my wife and my other sons and my family and just life in general point you there. But that, if I had to pick one person, what's the one person most responsible for you being sober? It was my first son. And there's just something about that. There's a responsibility here, whether you like it or not, and you can't drop it off somewhere. When the kid's not there, the responsibility remains. And I just get, it's something I actually love more than I love myself. You hated yourself. I love myself. We wound up in the same place. And I don't know that I love myself. I just maybe knew that I was just afraid of discomfort of any kind and wanted to find someone to blame. It's all kind of similar.
I think so. I think it just gets us, it's whatever it is itself. Mm-hmm. We're just focused right here all day long. It's like,
the piece of shit the world revolves around. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a Bible teacher. My mother used to listen to AM radio, all the Bible teachers. And there was a guy named A.W. Tozier, and he used to say, self, whether swaggering or groveling, is still an abomination to the Lord. It's true. It's like, the language doesn't really sit well with me, but it's true. It's really true.
Self. Yeah. Yeah. And like falsely swaggering self. Yeah, certainly mine. And so you've been sober how long now?
Just got through my 25th year. So yeah, wow. But I started getting sober in 1984. So that's when I went to the hospital, and I got out of the hospital. And back then it was literally a hospital because there were no treatment centers. So they started this like experimental treatment center in the unused wing of a hospital. And it was so antiseptic and horrible. But like the most exciting thing every day was the candy cart, Because
you're missing all that sugar from the booze.
Yeah. But, and I remembered just like a sad sack walking around the parking lot thinking, I'll never be happy again.
I'll certainly never have fun again.
I'm never going to laugh again. Yeah, exactly. Certainly. And, I had no idea what was ahead, but and honestly, I did not come out of there with a lot of surrender. I stopped drinking for about 7 years for Becca, really. But I was, because of my experiences in grade school as a kid, I hated groups where I didn't have some kind of control or an assigned role, usually on a stage, where I could be in charge on some level. And so to just walk into a group of strangers where everybody's coming from the same place, I couldn't do it. And so fortunately for me in Nashville back then, all of a sudden recovery was super vogue, everybody was doing it. And so like once I went on the rare occasions I would go to a meeting, like once I walked into a little meeting on Music Row in this tiny room, and here come Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings, like bigger than life, literally in this room that seats about 12 people. And they're and they totally take over and they cross talk and they don't observe any of the AA protocol. And everybody's just so excited. They're just sitting there
Just
saying
want an
nothing.
autograph.
It's like, or just to be in the room with them, but so I had lots of friends that were not drinking and that helped me, but I wouldn't go to meetings. If I got a sponsor, I probably called her once and that was it. I didn't really work the steps. I didn't do anything, and then when I was in my 30s, I married Kenny, my husband, and he's not an addict. He's just one of those people that can drink half a glass of wine and walk away. It's just
sickening. It's just sickening. What is that? What is all that about?
That's what I say. It's like, why?
With my wife, it's like, you're not going to finish that glass of wine? I'm like, no, you have to slug that. No, I don't slug things. No, you have to slug. Can't leave it. I never could leave anyone's glass. I just stop by other people's tables and finish off for them. Glasses have to be empty when they're done. So Kenny's one of those.
He is.
How can you play guitar like that without being an alcoholic? I don't get
it. He's got other problems.
Okay, good.
Rest assured.
Everybody's got an ism or so.
Everybody's got something. But no, and so I thought by then, I'd gotten involved in a church. I'd had a ton of therapy. I had friends in the program. I was, working my career was really going. And I thought, I've had so much help at this point. I bet I'm fixed. I bet I'm cured.
I've graduated.
I've
graduated from recovery.
In fact, I was in a little Music Row group with all these other musicians who were all horrible addicts, just like me. And we had a therapist, and we were all doing group. And when the group ended, we wanted to have T-shirts made. The therapist's name was Carl, Cured by Carl. But, Keith Whitley was in that group. So there you go. It's like, it is a vicious disease, but it took me a while to understand that. So I just decided that Kenny was, he was moderate. I could be moderate too. And
was he aware enough of what was going on to know?
Oh, he was so aware.
No, but I mean to say, hey, don't try this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, I spent the next 6 years off and on because I had 2 pregnancies. So my whole thing was proving I was a really good citizen. So like I didn't drink when I was pregnant. I would really rein it in. Like I'd drink 2 or 3 glasses of wine in a sitting. And then every once in a while I would let it go and drink the way I drank. But most of that 6 years, really, I was trying to prove that I didn't have a seat in those rooms.
Yeah, I wish I could drink like normal people. I do it all the time, right? That's the great recovery. I wish I could drink like normal people. I do it all the time, every day. I would,
Totally.
We just can't.
We cannot. But
and that's worse than not drinking, isn't it?
That was the thing that convinced me I was an alcoholic, because I thought about it was the first thing I thought about in the morning and the last thing I thought about at night. I thought about it all day long. I'm scheming up in my head. I'm so far up in my head. I was in another town. It's like, okay, I had 2 glasses of wine yesterday. Will anybody notice if I have 3 today? And it's like this chatter.
Don't eat. It'll hit me harder. And wait and have them all back to back to back. So I get a little
gosh. Pop. Yeah. It was insane. And I had, we had 3 kids. I had a career. I had this marriage, and it was like chaos. And for me, I mean, outwardly you couldn't tell as much, but Kenny could. And poor guy, he was trying very hard to stay in his own lane, but he would say stuff to me like, I don't think that you're one of those people that should be drinking. I can see it in your eyes. And that would antagonize me so much. I would just get enraged. I know. I'd say, what are you talking about? Look at, when have I didn't, I never, I wasn't, it just this, I just hit him with both barrels, and he'd say, okay.
It's so sweet that he would put it like that.
Well, yeah, I know. And he's probably thinking my life is going straight to hell. And, but it was
what
it was.
Were you involved in Christian music at this time? Is it Christian? Or were you started doing it? I mean, when was that merger? Because
I was kind of I had started to migrate over into Christian music, so that it was.
And those fans could be brutal.
It was, well, they didn't want me anyway. I mean, they just. It's
You're a rebel no matter where you are. I love that.
I know. I never fit in that industry. It's just that once I got married, I didn't care about writing about forsaken love songs anymore. I just thought, I really want to explore faith, because I wanted to try and know something about this God who was so kind to me and generous. And I didn't. So for me, that was the playing field as a writer.
And honestly, for me, that's the Christian music I want to hear.
Right.
Hopefully, well, the Grammy board felt the same way, because you got those. But I want to hear someone that's broken, fixed, and wants to sing. There's something contrived about a portion of the Christian music industry. I was raised having to play Christian music because we weren't allowed to listen to secular music.
Right.
Oh, that'll make you hate something.
Well, yeah. And so many of the Christian artists were so polished and so kind of squeaky clean. It's like, I can't, I'm still broken. I don't think I'm ever going to be fixed in this world. But that's the interesting, but that's kind of the interesting thing. So, but it kind of played into this whole narrative that I'm kidding myself with, I can handle this. I can drink. And so just to prove it to you, I'm going to have a really extensive devotional life. I'm going to spend an hour with the Lord every morning, which I kind of started doing. But every once in a while, I would feel like, just that once again, that the voice of God or the Spirit of God, or however you want to frame that, would just speak to me so clearly and say, why don't you give me the drink? And it's like, mind your own business. Can't you see that I'm managing here? Can't you see how well I'm doing?
I wanted your will this morning. It's 5.
I know. I know. So, and at one point, that happened more than once. And thank God I was doing all this massive pretense, and the devotional thing was part of that, because one morning I heard it again. And finally I said, look, I know I'm an alcoholic. I'm not stupid. I know that. I know this thing will never get better, only worse. But I'm telling you now, I cannot face my life without it, because there's some kind of hollow, cold place in me that I don't know what to do with. I don't know, and I said, however, if the drink is so important to you, you can give me the will to do it. Because I don't have it. I'm not going to have it. That's not something I'm going to be able to come up with.
You're aware of 12
I'm
steps.
totally, by that point, the obsession was very clear.
You had the head full of AA and the belly full of alcohol.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you know enough to know there was, okay, I just wanted.
Yeah. I knew, and I think I knew all along. I just wasn't ready to, there's readiness and readiness. But I just, and I didn't even ask for the willingness. I just said, if it's such a big deal to you, you're going to have to supply it. And we'll leave it at that. And one day, I have no idea how long after that it was. It wasn't like right after it, but one day, and the thing about the day was it was like this incredibly ordinary day. You know, I'm the kind of alcoholic that goes to jail, and I had not been to jail. I had not blown up a work relationship or personal relationship. I hadn't done something I couldn't take back. It was just a regular, ordinary day. I got up and went to an AA meeting, and it's like, and it was like these little old ladies over at St. Henry's Catholic Church, and there were about 5 of them, and they were so sweet. And I just told them my story, and one of them said, "Well, you better go to 40 meetings in 40 days." And I thought, 40 meetings in 40 days? I thought it was 30 and 30 or 90 and 90. And she said, "It does not matter. Just get to them meetings." So I did 30 and 30, and that changed everything. Because by the end of that, I'd picked a home group. I had a sponsor. But more than anything else, I just said, okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll do what they suggest.
You win. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, I'll just do. And for me, the step work has become kind of the crown jewel of what God's given me in that whole thing. It's just,
you can kind of get as much out of this thing as you want. Like I did a lot of years of cruise control. I did not go to 30 and 30 or 90 and 90. I went to this Cumberland Heights outpatient thing, and I'm like, I'm going to 3 meetings a week. I still had my middle finger out. I was special. Because if you've learned how to play 3 chords on a guitar, you are a little bit better than everybody else on earth, and worse than everyone too. It's ridiculous. And I just was not going to do 30 meetings in 30 days. I'm not, it's funny, in hindsight, I'm a much worse alcoholic than I thought I was at the time. Much worse addict. I'm like, I'm doing this because I know I should, but I haven't run it off the rails yet.
So you go from being a full-time drinker to a full-time asshole. And it's just,
exactly.
And there's that period.
It took me so long to get, I did the steps real fast with a sponsor. And then I kind of excused him because I had graduated from, and I'm still going to go 1 day a week. And I didn't want to sponsor or sponsees because it all seemed like too much work. And honestly, there's a few AA Nazis out there that just make you feel bad about everything because they know every page number, everything's memorized. And by the way, it's the same kind of response I had towards people that knew the Bible really well when I was growing up. So the truth is, I'm a rebellious asshole. And there are people that want to offer me help, and I resist it because I think they're condescending me. Funny how you don't like to get disrespected at all, but I haven't done anything to earn anyone's respect. But I remember that 30 and 30, 90 and 90. I'm like, it's impossible. And now I'm the one telling people to do that because you can get as much as you want. It took me probably 6-7 years in this to start really getting the benefits, which was really not just doing the steps, but it's doing them as a sponsor with someone else. So you feel a little bit more responsibility. I better dig in and figure out what this means. And it's pretty miraculous.
It's so miraculous. And we are who we are, where we are when we're there. It's like we just bring our whole selves to it. And some of us get it sooner, some of us get it later. But it's like it becomes our story.
And without it, you probably know, but you have a large impact on people. There have been, I've seen it in rooms. I've seen it myself. And I know that I'm able to have some impact somewhere that wouldn't be there without my story. And without my son's story, it also helps me to, I always had to tell my wife, my non-alcoholic wife, you can't take this personally. This is a great kid. It is the person that you know. The disease is what's freaking you out. The disease is what's lying and not showing up. And that's a tough one, but it does give you an understanding. And if I wasn't an alcoholic, I would have no grace for other people. I still struggle with it because now I can be condescending about the drunk guy. Wait, you were that guy. And I was going to ask you about your daughter because I know that you've had. It's. Yes. I know having a kid with the same disease is it's talk about powerless. We talk about powerless. You can't decide for them.
Oh God, it is the worst, and it is the worst thing for any parent anytime. But when you have been inflicting your own illness on that child unwillingly, but there it is. I mean, she was the baby I had, by myself, and I was all she had, and I was not sober for some of that, and I didn't get sober till she was like, well, she's almost 40, so it was a while, So she was like 15 when I got sober. So that's a lot of, there were 7 good years in there, but even then, it took me a while to learn how to live. So I have to say that was brutal. And she went for it. It can really accelerate down through the generations too. So
Yes.
I thought, I thought I was pretty hardcore, but she beat me in that department and went for it in a way where by the time she was in 8th grade, we had to start putting her in lockdowns. And, she was very beautiful and sneaking out with adults. And it was terrifying. It really was. And long before she started she was not a drinker. She was a drug user. But long before she even started using drugs, you could see the illness so clearly.
I knew about my son when he was 10. I told my wife, I said, he has the ism.
Yes.
This kid is, and he's the sweetest and most loyal and whatever. And he's also frustrated and impatient. And it's almost hard to describe, but you understand. So I totally get that. Long before, he was 10 years old. And I'm like, no, we're going to have to watch this.
Yes. You see it coming in a way that, and so like we had her in all kinds of therapeutic situations and we're trying to get outside help, lots of support she had. And she was one of those people that people loved her. So there's that part too. It's like you go into an AA meeting and you realize in some ways you're among some of the best and brightest people that exist. And they are definitely, we belong to a club we don't want to belong to, but yet when you get in there, you just think, oh, that's not bad.
Oh yeah, no, I do want to belong.
I do now.
I'm actually
absolutely.
grateful to have been, to be an alcoholic. And some people disagree with that, but I need this. I need all of it. I would just be an unrecovering asshole without it.
Right. So, she had so much support. Kenny adopted her when we got married. He loved her. But she had her destiny. And so I think, she just started rolling. She never really, after 8th grade, we would take her to a lockdown. She'd do really, really well. We'd bring her back, put her back in school. And within 6 months, she was, gone again and we just couldn't, we had 2 small children. It was just it was a nightmare. So we took her back to the same place and we'd bring her back. And away she'd go. And then finally, and she eventually landed in San Francisco. And Becca's always, she's always found men to sort of enable and take care of her. And they're generally probably the worst possible candidates to have a relationship with. So they're destructive and hurtful. And, but we just wouldn't hear from her for years. And at one point, and then she'd surface. She went to treatment, she'd surface, she'd go to treatment. And by then, I had become super active in the recovery program the way you are. And you start to know people and people want to help you. And there was no shortage of opportunity for her to go to treatment. People would do it gratis. They would do, they would just off. And so there was always an opportunity for her to get help. But I was at the helm. I was putting it together. I was the planner. I was the expediter. So it was it wasn't that she hated it. She'd go willingly, but it would belong to me. It was not her deal. So when she was done, she'd go back to her life and think she could, and I think there was some small desire or thought, oh, this will translate. I can go back and do what I was doing and I can still keep it together, but we know that it doesn't work that way. So that just went on and on and on and on. And then when she was about 15, or when I was about 15 years sober, she called me from San Francisco and said, I'm going into a detox unit for heroin. And prior to that, she was a meth addict. And I had no idea she was using heroin. And so she said, well, I want you to come out here and help me get into a halfway house. And I said, I'm on my way. And poor Kenny, once again, poor Kenny, he goes, I really think you need to let her do this on her own. She's an adult. This is not your issue. My baby needs me. What are you talking about? I'll move heaven and earth. She asked me to come, butt out once again. I mean, that's a common theme for me.
Yeah.
But
it's all natural instinct, of course.
Yeah. And so I fly to San Francisco. I'm staying with friends. And I guess, and I had the hubris in me to say to Kenny, it's like, I'm 15 years sober. I work a good program. Blah, blah, blah. And I said, the sanity that I now have will trump any insanity in the room. And it's like, you fucking idiot. It's like, I think I was in San Francisco for an hour and a half before I was on fire, just crazed, because I was trying to go up against the one thing that I cannot do battle with, which is addiction. I can't battle it in myself, and I certainly can't battle it in somebody else.
As hard as surrendering your own addiction is, surrendering your kid's addiction is way harder.
Oh my gosh. It was a nightmare.
Impossible to a certain extent.
It was impossible. And you just watch, like, she compromised me, the people I was staying with. Like, she took off with their house key and disappeared. And there's this crazed boyfriend. And it was just a nightmare, but it was the thing that I most needed because, like I said, I was born needing Al-Anon. I was born to I was born needing a drink and an Al-Anon meeting, not in that order,
diapers,
probably.
Yeah.
And, it's like, but I came back to Nashville and I crawled into a parent's Al-Anon. And we are so, like, I know you know this, in this city and the surrounding area, we are just so fortunate because the AA, all the 12-step programs are so well represented here. But the AA and the Al-Anon is off the scale. I mean, and the way you know that is the level of commitment to recovery. Yeah. And we have things like a parents' Al-Anon meeting because you and I deal with something that even people that are dealing with addicts do not. I mean, because it's your child. It's like from the minute that baby comes into the world, all you care about is trying to keep them safe. Yeah. All you care about is nurturing them in any way you can find. And to have to, at this, you have to change horses and redefine love. And it involves a death of self that is so profound. I don't think I was ready for it before then. But by then, I just realized if I don't get help, it doesn't matter how many years I've been sober, my kid's illness is going to kill me. Yeah. And at that point, I thought, and I'd go in there and they start saying things like, giving other people the dignity of their own choices. And I'm thinking, oh my God, who are these people? What are you talking about?
Dignity.
Yeah. What are you talking about? We're talking about life and death. We're talking about such dangerous, horrible things here. And they said, there's no qualifier. We don't know. We don't know. We're going to learn how to let go and let God to the fullest extent of that. And, it changed my life in the most, AA absolutely changed my life. This took me to a whole new place. And of learning that the best thing I could offer my child and my children and my husband and the world was if I learned how to take care of myself, which seems antithetical when you're in the situation you are with an active addict, but it also seems, it flies in the face of Christian teaching. It's like, you selfish ass. You're supposed to just give yourself away till you're down to nothing.
It's the airplane thing. Put your mask on first. I can't help it. And I'll say this in the church where I grew up. Sometimes a lot of people with no mask on run around putting everyone else's mask on.
Oh, yeah.
That's the old speck in the eye thing.
Yeah.
And we tend to do that a lot. And you don't know the ripples that happen. You wrote me a letter when Sage died. And I don't know if you remember what it was in it, but you talked about your daughter. I still have it. I dug it out the other day because I just put it in a drawer. There's very few things, but first of all, no one writes a handwritten letter anymore. So, but it meant so much there was the day that I got it. It was that was what I needed that day. Your willingness in that spot, like when we stop looking at God as the judger of our behavior and start going, okay, can I help you out? This profane guitar player guy, can I help? Can I do something good for him? And he's, yeah, here, I'm going to put you in the game. You're going to be the slot receiver. You're not the quarterback because I'm the quarterback and the coach, but knowing that you can do something, and if it's little and what ripple it would have, but literally I'm remembering that letter and that day, it was exactly what I needed. And you talked about your daughter, and I thought, as much pain as in the death of my kid, there's a peace that we have because we do know where he is. And like Casey Bethard says, I have one of my kids that is okay. The other four I'm worried about, but the one that's in heaven, I'm sure that one is good for now. And just sharing the pain and I'm like, yeah, we had some sleepless nights, and certainly what can we do? And the answer sometimes is just, there's nothing. This is, I'm barely able to monitor myself, but try and want someone to have something so bad that you would give up your life for them to have it and watch them not take it. And then I had a year where he took it. It was like almost a year of sobriety, and it was amazing. It was such a gift, but I still couldn't chain him to be. The day that it happened, it was fentanyl. He didn't know he was buying fentanyl. It was an overdose. It was an accident. It was actually second-degree murder for the guy that sold him the drugs because it was, it's a very small amount. It wasn't like he OD'd. And I would have chained myself to him that day, and we would have been fine that day. You don't know what day it is. And you can't chain yourself to anyone every day. And so I just I'm grateful for your willingness to like reach out when it was, I don't know if God told you to write that letter that day, but that day it was what I needed to have. And that's what we do now. I will occasionally run to the spot I'm supposed to be instead of away from it now, which is really a miracle because I don't really want any kind of discomfort or conflict before I got sober.
I know that. But, that's the thing that happens. It's like you start to put yourself, if not first, towards first, in terms of taking care of yourself and being kind to yourself. And there's a lot more of you to give away. That's just how it works. But also that whole thing that you were saying, that was one of the key things that Al-Anon gave me. This, my sponsor said to me early on, she goes, I said, how can I not do X, Y, Z? And she said, what do you know? What do you know about what your daughter needs, or even about what you need? What do you know about what God wants? You know, what do you know about really anything? You don't. So if you just stay in your lane and keep letting go and asking God to, you know, show you the path, then you just live your life. And stuff like that, where you just think, I want to reach out to this person, or this person is on my heart.
I've done it a lot more. It doesn't enter my mind. And I'm like, well, should I or shouldn't I? I just reach out now. And if it was inconvenient for you to get that text of encouragement from me, I'm sorry. You have to live with it. But the truth is, no one's mad at you for sending a text saying, I'm thinking about you today. I mean, and if they are, they probably needed that text more than they know. And the perspective change. I always say I would give anything to go back and live my whole adult life, at least with the perspective change that I have now, just to not have to be afraid of death, and to wear life like a loose garment, to not have to be in control of every situation, to at least attempt to be in the moment. I literally lived my whole life with, parking at the stadium for a football game where I knew I could get out soon. So I didn't, literally leaving early so I didn't have to sit in traffic. I never was anywhere for like 40 years almost. Even as a sober person, I just was never anywhere. I was on the next thing to the next event, and just living in the moments. It's like amazing, because it's the things that used to matter kind of stop mattering. Like I have JOMO instead of FOMO, which is the joy of missing out.
I'd never heard that until this moment.
So grateful when I don't get invited to something now.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
No, but the whole, our business and trying to kind of be in the middle of it. I'm just like, I still love to work and I love to write. I don't care about the results anymore.
No.
I probably should, but I just don't. I think better product will come out of it, but the hustle and the shuck and jive and the show up and meet people for the 50th time, it just kind of loses, the petty things kind of lose their power. And I'm grateful for that.
The same way. I really do. And I think too, that's the other thing. It's like you realize at the end of the day, you go through something so life-shattering, and you realize none of that stuff is going to sustain anybody. It's human connection every time. So if, and I think knowing what it feels like to be in so much pain over a kid, I probably could not have not reached out,
And that's the difference between, at least for me, this beyond the idea that I'm not drinking or using, I actually will stop and think about other people at some point. And I don't really think I've been 17 years, so it's been a long time. And I wasn't like the worst guy in the world, although I had become pretty rotten at the end. But the instinct to actually reach out to someone for their benefit, not for like a connection, it just was foreign to me. And this has made it more like an instinct to do something like that. And
it's a beautiful thing. Crazy. It's like, thank you, Lord. I'm approaching decent.
Yeah. I'm approaching like a regular person after 53 years.
Yeah. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I'm so thankful for that. It's like everything in my life that even matters to me on any level has in so many ways been defined by loss. And I don't know how to, when it happens, I'm just as devastated as anybody would be, and just feel, mad and in despair. But every good thing about me came from that place of completely being shattered. And so I kind of can't argue with it.
No doubt. The worst days of my life were the best days of my, I mean, the made me the decision to go to rehab, which was the full admission that I wasn't actually an alcoholic and an addict, was the worst. I mean, nobody winds up there on a winning streak. It's not like, but that just, I mean, it changed. Literally, I was approaching decent, and then then losing a child. I've said this on here before, but I had an agreement with God. You take one of my kids, I'm drinking again, dude. This all bets are off. Like, you can't, surely you can't expect me to do all this work and be sober guy and then take one of my children and expect me not to drink. And it never crossed my mind. It's the furthest thing from my mind, to be honest, which is crazy, miraculous. And, we talk about God doing for us what we can't do for ourselves. But the truth is, I've never been more repulsed by the whole thing. Just the whole idea of it, it's just kind of gross and disgusting. And I'm like, you're taking perfectly awesome people and just fucking them up. I am not, you know what I mean? I'm not good. Whatever that is, whatever that giant is of addiction, I'm just not okay with it anymore. And there's moderation in that, because I can become the judgy jackass that has to tell everyone what they think. But in my heart and soul and spirit, that was the furthest thing from my mind when he passed. And in hindsight, I look back and go, man, I'm grateful for that.
Oh God.
Because I would have been in jail. I'd have been in jail. I'd have been in jail. I'd have hurt the person that sold him the fentanyl, and I would have been probably drunk driving arrest. But I mean, I'd be in jail and maybe dead, and have ruined everyone around me's life. And I mean, I'm just grateful. My sweet wife, even, she said, I would understand if you drank. And I'm like, oh, don't say that. Like, after we lost him. And I'm like, oh, you don't mean that, because believe me, what's in my head is not a couple of shots and a beer at some bar. What's in my head is like mayhem for the world, and let me go out. And that's totally got to be God to take away that insane desire to do something like that. I really don't have it.
Oh my gosh. And also, I mean, it's like a slap in the face of what he meant to you. The only way out is through. It's like, we know this, and it's like a bumper sticker, but it's really actually true. And that's the other thing. I just think, for me, and I still think, I have to say, I think there's a cold spot in me that came early on that stays. But
that's why you play guitar like Keith Richards. You wouldn't be able to without that spot.
Maybe, but I also think too that recovery, it's that weird thing with recovery where you come in because drinking is killing you and you're desperate to not be on that path anymore. But it's kind of like, I just came in to not drink. I didn't, and then all these things are on offer to you, like, and you can learn how to live, and you can learn how to have relationships, like real relationships, and you can, and. Well, one of the things I feel like that my recovery has given me is the opportunity to grieve honestly, and to let things be, instead of going through all these, attempts to get around it or to avoid it altogether, or to push it down or whatever, or blame it on somebody else, but to just take it and go. And I'm so thankful for that. I feel like I feel more connected. You were talking about earlier about staying in the present. I think for me, that was a reason that I did not stay in the present. There was a lot of pain there because it was cumulative.
Yeah.
It was all this stuff I'd never faced. So I do think what a gift to what your son meant to you. You know, that you would be willing to say, Sage was so important to me. I'm going to go through this sober.
And you said a slap in the face to what he meant to you. When you said that earlier, I have like I have a couple rules. Like I have people in my family that drink responsibly and they're fine and whatever. But I have a rule. Like when we talk about Sage, no one's consumed alcohol. It's like a respect thing. There are certain ways that hey, you want to have drinks? That's fine. You want to talk about Sage? That's fine. But we're not putting those two things together because when you said that, it really hit me. That is really important to me that my life honors what by the way, he loved being sober. He loved it. And he took to it like, you know, it was a great year. And we talked about it. I got to say everything, the things that you want to say. And I'm so grateful. God gave me that year. There's no doubt. But it is interesting that you used that slap in the face because I was like, no, I cannot dishonor his, like we have a birthday party for him. And I'm like, just for tonight, nobody gets to drink wine. Just tonight is his. And we're going to honor that way. And that's more important to me than like an excuse. I have the excuse now. Well, you have every right to go out and use and drink. And I can't believe
you're not there anymore.
No, it's gone. The desire is gone, which is amazing.
It is. It is
pretty miraculous. Before we go, I ask everybody 2 questions, and they are: what's the worst thing that ever happened to you, and what's the best thing that came out of that?
Well, I mean, the obvious thing to say is addiction's the worst thing that ever happened to me comprehensively, but I can't say it is. I just can't say it. I just, and they tell you when you are working a program of recovery that you'll get to that place where you don't regret it. But I think, so for me personally, one of the things that I, was a real big part of my identity and particularly coming out of a place where I didn't have much self-esteem was my ability to sing and play music. And so maybe 5 or 6 years ago, my voice just quit on me. And it was kind of on a downward slide anyway, but it just stopped working. And it was kind of probably a combination. I'm 65 now. So it was like this collision of age and about 20 bad habits between me and my vocal cords. And I could not. And so I went to all these vocal coaches, like the top of the line people, different ones. And I really worked at it for several years, and I intellectually understood what they were trying to tell me, but I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't absorb it. I don't know why, but I just, and you know how it is. It's like not getting it. That wasn't something that just happened exclusively in my little office where I was rehearsing. That happened on big stages, and it's like. And I just hang my head and think, and I would say to the Lord all the time, I don't know who I am if I'm not a singer. And, but also, that was something my husband and I did a lot together. So that went away because I didn't want to do it anymore. And then I kind of felt like, I'm not a musician anymore. And so I lost my tribe. Mm-hmm. So it was like this thing where it's really hard for me to say what it was for me, like devastation wise. It was below devastation. It was like this leveling.
Your whole identity from the time you can remember is wrapped up in it. I have another friend, and yes, it's really, really.
Oh, I know several. I mean, now I
Some
know
of your
a
peers,
bunch. Yeah, I've got a bunch of peers that have been through this or are in it now or whatever. But so, at one point, I hike a lot. And once again, I'm saying to the Lord, I am so lost. I don't have any skills other than writing and music. I don't want to do anything else. I'm unemployable. You already knew that. And,
This is it.
and once again, it's like, I just felt like the Lord just said, your voice has never been about your singing. I would have thought you'd known that by now. It's like, whatever. And so what happened was I literally stumbled into this spiritual direction apprenticeship because I thought, well, I have some discernment skills. And I really do. I feel like I love to encourage people in their relationships with God, which is really at the heart of spiritual direction, is just listening to the Lord together. So I did this 2-year apprenticeship with a woman in Colorado Springs, who's probably one of the greatest spiritual directors in the world. And she had just started taking on apprentices. And then COVID happened. And I was going to this Anglican church over in Green Hills. And I told one of the pastors was a close friend. And the other one, the main one, I barely knew. But I told them both, I said, look, I've been in this apprenticeship for almost 2 years. And I've got a bunch of directees that I meet with online. And so I have that capacity. I think this is going to be rough. This is April 2020. And so I said, if anybody at this church would like spiritual direction during this, I'd love to just offer it just as a way to serve the church, And I think I'd spoken at a women's retreat for the church, and I had a few friends there, but I didn't know very many people. So I thought, this is kind of a vulnerable thing. I don't know if anybody's going to take me up on it, but a bunch of people did. And at the end of the year, the main rector at this church said, we've wanted to bring a woman on in a part-time pastoral role for a long time, and we have the money to do it. Would you be interested in being here like 15 hours a week? It's strictly pastoral. You don't have to administrate or program. You're just being with people. And so there was this part of me where it said, you're not employable.
That's a job.
And then this tiny little yes. And I said, Lord, if I'm going to be a problem for these people, please do not give me this job, because I know how much of a problem I can truly be. And this is a church. The church has enough problems without me adding to them.
Yeah.
And so
now I'm part of the machine.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
But there was just this tiny little yes. And so it's been a little over a year and a half. It has been the most beautiful thing. It's been, and our main rector and his daughter were killed in a car wreck a year ago. It'd be a year Tuesday. And so we have been, as a church, and they all knew him way better than I did because I'd just gotten there. The church itself and certainly individuals have been through a profound grief. But it was like I was ready for it.
Mm-hmm. You're able to be there. That is so amazing. You said your voice has never been about your singing. I mean, think about that.
Then about, so Beth Chapman is a friend of mine, and she is a really great voice coach. She trained with a really good voice coach here named Gerald Arthur, and she has the capacity to communicate it. So, and I'd gotten with Beth. She'd forgotten that, and I couldn't figure out what she was talking about. But about 3 months ago, she goes, "Why don't you come over? I really think I can help you with this. There's nothing wrong with you." And I said, "There's so much wrong with me." But
you don't know half of it.
But she goes, "Well, just try." And it was like, I got my voice back. I don't know how it happened.
Well, you see what happened
She
there.
showed me. So it was like
God wants you to lose your voice just long enough to take the job.
Exactly. To get, so it was like the Lord gave me all that stuff. And then he said, and here, you can go do.
Because he knew you were too stubborn to take the job without losing your voice. Right?
I never would have done it.
That's like, I know, like I had to get my arm twisted, for whatever.
Right. So it was like,
oh, that's so funny.
Isn't that
it's
something?
Awesome.
It's so awesome. And it is so, and that's the thing. It's like whether I'm losing my voice or with all the loss that I have felt with Becca, it's like we need to know at the end of the day that we can live a joyful life no matter what. And like no qualifiers. Like if all is lost, you can still be content and have a happy life. And that to me is what has happened through all these odysseys. It's like loss is really an avenue to gain. But the thing is, it's like you can't say, I used to lay on the floor and beg God to give Becca back to me. Just beg him and say, why won't you do this? And none of that ever happened, but he just kept giving me more of himself. Mm-hmm. And that's the deal.
Heard someone say the other day, it's all going to be okay in the end. And if it's not the end, if it's not okay, it's not the end yet. And the truth is, our mutual friend, Steve Lee, he's got a couple great ones.
I love very much.
One of them is, you're not who I thought about when you're talking about your job. You're not who you think you are. You're not who they think you are. And you're definitely not who you think they think you are.
That's right.
And I literally could think if I wasn't playing guitar and writing songs, the world would quit turning. Like I surely must be doing this. And the deal is, the vulnerability that I'm willing to show turns out to be the strength, and it's just so uncomfortable. I just don't want to do this stuff. I'm like, God, come on, you're embarrassing me. He's like a parent sometimes. God going, come on, go out there, get in the game.
That's right. Get in the game.
Yeah.
That's right. My favorite Steve Lee-ism is...
he should have a book.
I know. He said, one of his first sponsors said, Steve, it's clear to me that you have a heart's desire to serve God. It's just too bad it's in an advisory capacity.
And I'll end with this last one of his, which makes me think of you at the very end, is I have to stop acting like I know what just happened. And the truth is, I don't know what just happened. I know that I've been going through pain and suffering, and I know that I found a ton of joy in it. And I found some of the greatest people on earth to suffer with me.
That's right.
And
that's right.
I hate that that's how we met, but I don't know what just happened. So, training ground. Well, thank you so much for doing this. You're amazing.
Oh my gosh.
You're an inspiration. Love you. Great. I really do love listening to you talk.